The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Alleged extortion by an Israeli website leads to arrests and has the ultra-Orthodox community up in arms. New recipes for Passover, checking in with one of Israel's leading universities, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Approximately 30 people have been arrested in France on suspicion of verbally supporting terrorist activity in the week since the shooting deaths of 3 Jewish schoolchildren and a rabbi, as well as those of several French soldiers. As TJC reported last week, the activities of Mohamed Merah are revealing to the public just how broad and active are efforts to recruit jihadists in the West. Merah was reportedly connected to networks that included potentially hundreds of European-born Muslims already involved in jihadist efforts or hoping to join them. Many of the arrests thus far have not been for active involvement in terrorism, but rather statements of, quote, extreme views on radical Islamist websites. But 13 of those arrested are being charged with plotting specific terrorist activities, including plotting to kidnap a Jewish judge in Lyon. France has also expelled from the country 5 Muslim clergymen for what is being described as radical Islamic teachings. Of course, France, as with many countries throughout Europe and the rest of the globe, does not have the same guarantees of freedom of expression and freedom of religion that we do here in the United States. But speaking of one's rights in regard to law enforcement here in the U.S., a Jewish rabbi accused of sexually abusing children in Australia, who fled to the U.S. some months ago, may be headed back. Australian authorities have said they plan to ask for the arrest and extradition of Rabbi David Kramer, a former teacher at a Chabad Lubavitch day school in Melbourne, over allegations he abused boys between 1989 and 1993. Kramer is actually already in prison here in the United States. After he fled Australia, he landed first in Israel and then in the U.S., where he pleaded guilty in 2008 to molesting a 12-year-old boy at a synagogue in Missouri. With Kramer soon eligible for parole, Australian law enforcement is considering pressing charges and collecting Kramer to respond to allegations there. The story of alleged abuse in the Australian Jewish school continues to grow. The Australian Jewish News reports that as many as 6 people associated with the school are being investigated for child abuse. But while those individuals may or may not be arrested by Australian authorities, the Israeli government has arrested 4 men on charges of extortion relating to an ultra-Orthodox news website. According to police, the men would post defamatory content on the website, and when contacted by the targets of the defamatory posts, they would offer to take them down in exchange for money. Israeli newspaper Yediot Achronot says it has a tape of the CEO making explicit the extortionate approach of this website, Bechadrei Haredim. The CEO, Guy Cohen, who is actually a secular businessman who bought the site from its ultra-Orthodox founders a few years ago, is quoted saying on the tapes that the aim is to create a positive public atmosphere for the client and not just prevent a negative one, adding, I have a very limited number of clients whom I keep happy. They have nothing to worry about. The smallest client pays $10,000 a month. Those targeted in this alleged extortion scam include prominent ultra-Orthodox businessmen and potentially also rabbis. And while all of this week's news will make for passionate conversations around the Seder table for Passover, Meredith Gansman reports on some new recipes sure to keep the food interesting throughout the holiday.
Vanilla and chocolate mousse cake, macarons, looks delicious. And would you believe they're kosher for Passover?
Before you get your fill of typical Passover dishes, leave room on your menu for some new recipes that are easy to make and sure to please your family and holiday guests, courtesy of one of New York's most popular kosher restaurants. Doris Schechter is the founder of My Most Favorite Food, a dairy eatery on Manhattan's Upper West Side, which will remain open for the interim days of Passover.
I really wanted to be there for every level of Judaism, and I really wanted everyone to be able to eat under my roof.
And the restaurant, which is known especially for its desserts, shows off Schechter's Italian and Austrian roots. Schechter's confections, many of which are dairy, challenge people's stereotypes about kosher baking.
So people have such a misconception because somehow or other when they think of kosher that you can't use butter, you know what I'm saying? Or you can't use olive oil, or you can't use fresh vegetables. So it's really a misconception
Cooking kosher for Passover presents other challenges, especially for a restaurant that features pasta dishes. But Schechter has come up with a substitution.
Spaghetti squash. And we did that with a vegetable, tomato sauce and sauteed vegetables.
And for the Jewish channel, Schechter and her executive chef Louis showed me how to prepare two of my most favorite foods, new Passover dishes: hearty and healthy veggie burgers, and for dessert, Viennese crescent cookies.
We have some peppers, onions, leeks, grated carrots, and of course the cake meal, and grated potatoes.
Begin by sautéing the onions and the peppers, then add leeks for crunch and flavor. To the shredded potatoes and carrots, sprinkle in cilantro, mint, and lemon zest, and then mix together with the sautéed vegetables. Stir in an egg substitute, a combination of baking powder, olive oil, and water, to keep these veggie burgers completely vegan. Finally, deep fry the veggie patties for 3 to 5 minutes and serve them either on kosher for Passover popover buns or between iceberg lettuce leaves for a lighter option. For more kosher for Passover recipes from my most favorite food, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, Christian Needon reports on an Israeli university's research on juvenile diabetes.
Millions of Americans have diabetes, a disorder where the body has trouble regulating its blood glucose. According to the American Diabetes Association, around 5% of them have a form known as type 1 or juvenile diabetes, which requires insulin therapy for their survival from childhood onward. But a cure may be on the way, thanks to Israeli diabetes expert Dr. Eli Lewis, who recently toured the U.S. to talk up his groundbreaking research at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. Dr. Lewis said that by using a molecule found naturally in the body that prevents inflammation and protects tissues, he can reverse diabetes and restore glucose control for millions of type 1 sufferers around the world.
It's a very favorable approach for the body because you don't introduce something artificial, you don't interfere with the original biological design. You basically extend in this approach something that the body would have done for a week or two into several weeks, in a safe manner.
He added that his findings have been received well in the U.S. and the clinical trials have showed promise.
When the FDA saw these proposals of ours and the study started to spread through Colorado first and then Harvard and then Israel, 3 studies almost at the same time, the FDA was very happy to give us a very fast-track approval, 3 years. That's very fast. For phase 2A, which means there's no issues with side effects. It's already possible to give it to kids in Israel as young as 4 years old, in the States as young as 16 or 6 years old and above.
Lewis said that in these trials, patients have started seeing results following an 8 to 12-week treatment regimen.
Within 1 year, we seem to have evidence that giving this component that the body was supposed to make to protect for a certain length of a few weeks provides a very generous advantage, and some of these outcomes are absolutely mind-blowing. Day and night, kids don't need insulin. They are on normal diets. They do not need, without exception, nighttime insulin. And that one little thing at night when people take insulin before they go to bed is the only reason today to fear a lethal, deadly end for type 1.
Lewis highlighted the need in the U.S. and Israel for curing type 1 diabetes, whose origin is still a mystery.
Every day in the United States, there's 40 more diagnosed kids with type 1. Every day. Israel is not far behind. We're very westernized, not too different in this epidemiologic studies. And we also have a high frequency of type 1 diabetes. I say high frequency because I think it's unacceptable. I wish it were lower.
To hear more about Dr. Lewis's efforts to find a cure for type 1 diabetes, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. That's all for this week from all of us here at the Jewish Channel. Have a lovely Passover and be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.